everybody, and welcome to the May edition of the IQ Media Masterclass. My name is Madeleine White. I am VP Marketing at Pool, co-founder of the Audiences, and I always feel like I'm listing things when I'm saying this, but I'm also supporting IQ Media Hub in their distribution strategy, we'll say, and managing their LinkedIn as well as their newsletter. And these masterclasses, which is a pleasure to run, and invite each month someone from the industry to share their expertise for you on how you can digitally transform your publication. And that sounds like a huge task. But today we have Ignaz here with us to help us make that more manageable and accessible for publications at any stage of transformation. So thank you so much for being here. Do you want to maybe introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ignaz van Hasselt, currently working for Mather Economics as Director of Europe. But in the past 10 years, I've been mainly working for Media House, which is also part owner of Mather Economics, hence the bridge for me. And today I'll tell you something about my work in the editorial room of their biggest publication, where I was the data science manager. So how do we get data insights and data into the newsroom?
Yeah, incredibly big topic. And you have helped hundreds of publishers around the world, and so has Mather. Maybe you could start by sharing what Mather Economics does, and then we can lead into sharing the topic for today.
Yeah, sure. So Mather Economics is really a one-stop shop, as we call it. We can help you from the audience engagement to dynamic paywalls to get more conversions, but also prevent them from churning. And that's all at the right price and the right customer lifetime value. So we're really making a 360 product to really boost subscription growth in terms of volume and revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of the introduction to today's session as well. How to, I'd say, get started on digital transformation, but when I say it like that, it sounds like this small project that you're doing that's going to last just a year, but it's a whole complete company transformation, and there's so many different aspects of it, and it sounds like this very daunting task. And today you're going to kind of break it down a bit more for us and make it feel more accessible and available to publishers of any shapes and sizes.
I hope so.
Shall we jump straight in?
Yeah, great. Let me pull up my presentation. So let me know if you can see this.
Yes, all good.
So this is just an overview page, but the main requests, or a lot of publishers, what they want already for 10 years, mostly in Europe, is we want actually to drive subscription revenue. So the question for me mostly is, okay, do we want to increase the amount of subscription that we have or their customer lifetime value? Preferably you want to increase both. But on the right side, you can increase your customer lifetime value either by increasing their lifetime or by the average margin per user. On the other side, the amount of subscriptions is determined by the amount of inflow you have, so your conversions subtracted by the amount of outflow you have. Preferably outflow you want to go down and inflow you want to go up. Well, on the outflow, there you can bracket it up, and hopefully it makes more sense in a later stage, but you have your natural attrition, your natural churn. People just don't stop using the product. You have your price-related churn. Every time you do a price increase, people churn because of the price is not more in line with how they value the product, but also engagement-related churn. That's what you mostly now can measure in terms of digital subscriptions. People start using the product less and less and less, and then they reach a churn point. I will mainly talk about the left side, the inflow, the conversions part, which is made up of your conversion rate. So the people who hit the paywall, how many people are actually converting. Well, this is what you call the conversion optimization rate, or it's closely linked to the willingness to buy, which is partly made of the offer, at what price, what product, term length, all stuff like that. My work at Media House has mainly been focusing on building traffic with higher engagement, so getting either more users or getting the users to have a higher usage. So all in all, these are all the levers that we usually try to increase or decrease when we're talking about churn to actually drive subscription revenue. But as you can see, it's quite complicated. It's not a small project. You can do so many things to eventually drive subscription revenue. But for today, I will dive deeper into the users and the usage. Mm-hmm. But there for me are a few core things when I start with a lot of publishers, and that's what I say is if you want to drive subscription revenue, the base of the pyramid really is your value. Your value is made up of your content, and your platforms. You need to really have great content, but also the user experience on your platforms. You need to have a good app. You need to have a good site. It all needs to work together. Then we can discuss a price. But a lot of publishers reach out for pricing, but if I look at their product, their content analytics, their content performance is not on the level it should be, then it's really hard to ask the right price or the price that the publisher wants to ask for it. On top of the pyramid, that's the conversion rate optimization. So that's funnel efficiency. This is something which is really good to have, but yeah, you can really have a super smart conversion rate or a high conversion rate, but if your product is not there yet, this is just a temporary fix. But for most publishers, we insert it because it's quite good in getting some low-hanging fruit and to further optimize it. So for Matter Economics, we help on all these parts, but what I try to do for most publishers who cannot leverage AI models or bigger contracts, what can people in the newsroom do themselves, or what can you do with some sort of data to actually drive more traffic, more users, and more usage? That's what I will talk about today.
Does that apply to publishers who are launching subscriptions as well? Because that pyramid is really, really interesting. And my first question when you showed that slide is incredible. That's incredible value for someone who's looking to optimize their subscription revenue. But someone who's starting out, should they therefore start at the bottom of that funnel and to the left of that kind of tree?
Yes. So for some publishers, actually last year, they started implementing a paywall and asking revenue for their digital subscriptions. Of course, you need to just start at a point. So you put in a price, but yeah, 12 months later, you need to reevaluate it. So the balance between what price do I ask and what value do I have, that needs to be in balance. And from the start, you don't know what value people perceive, because value is not the same as perceived value. So that's what you're trying to uncover in your first year to actually implement it. But the content needs to be there. For most publishers, especially when I'm talking about magazines, what works in print and print magazines is not copy-pastable for digital. So there you really need to say, okay, what is my business case, or what content, or what do I want to be online? Going from monthly visits to weekly visits, what do I offer on a daily basis? So yeah, I mostly work as okay, fix your value, so your site, your app, but mainly your content first, before we really drive into optimizing the price. You need a price point, you need an anchor. So that's what you set in place. But what needs to increase is your value first.
Yeah, really valuable recommendations there. And in terms of starting out goals, so when you launch your subscription, you're defining like a target. Would you recommend that being around subscriber numbers or around revenue, or lifetime value is kind of an overall overarching one?
So mostly, I think best to talk about subscribers, because eventually from an editorial standpoint, that's what you're in the business for. But the way organizations work, it's often tied to a P&L, to a budget, and that's it. But that brings you in an awkward position, because sometimes, and for a lot of publishers who are dipping their toes into digital revenue or digital subscriptions, okay, don't really bank on the revenue you're getting from this. This is a long-term investment, which you can make profitable in the long term, 3 to 5 years. But for now, you just need to be focusing on providing more value. And sometimes that means, okay, if we lower the price, for example, if you do half of the revenue and you get 2 times more inflow or growth, it's the same amount of revenue, but you grow twice as fast. You get twice as much user feedback and the content that you can spread. So I wouldn't tie it to budget, because I think most optimal strategy is, okay, forego budget in the first 3 years, mainly focus on building an audience, building engagement, and that you do actually with the amount of users or subscribers that you have. And so what else did I want to show is a publication and production strategy I did for a publisher. When I first joined this publisher, there were talks about, okay, we have like the biggest site, we have 17 million unique visitors, which was more than the population. Our site's really where our visitors go to. There's a lot of traffic, a lot of pages, a lot of ad revenue. By the way, we also have an app. Thinking about, okay, we need to incorporate a paywall. Where are my subscribers coming from? Will it be web? Will it be app? So I made my own engagement buckets at that time, like, okay, who is my core audience? My core audience is actually my subscribers, but also people who come here on a weekly basis, daily basis, people who frequently read our stories. So by splitting up in these segments and making a split between web and app, you quickly see that the web users, the buckets are quite much higher, but skewed to the left. So it was diminishing the higher the engagement, the lower the amount of people in the group were. While for app, it actually ramped up until the most highly engaged user group. So looking at this picture, then asking myself the question, okay, so who do I think are actually going to convert? It was actually this addicts group, what we called it, that 4 times as much in the app as they did on web. So looking around in the newsroom, what I actually noticed is people, because they are on the laptop, everyone is looking, okay, how does the site perform? How does it look like on the desktop? While a quick change we actually made is put on vertical screens, and everyone just put in an app modulator so that they can see how does it actually look on the app, how does it actually look on mobile, because that is the main way that our highly engaged users are using our platforms. And this small change in terms of fonts, storylines, user experience, that really made a huge impact on engagement. But secondly, I was trying to get to know this publication. So I was trying to read some articles. But every few hours that I was in meetings, then I went back to the homepage, tried to read new articles, and the homepage was completely new. And then I asked the publishers, like, okay, why are we refreshing the homepage as much? Yeah, it's old news. It's been there up for an hour. I'm like, okay, but it's old news for you. But for me, who behaves like a reader, I come here once, maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times per day. It's moving at a much too fast pace. And that's what also the data showed, is that our average highly addicted or engaged people, they come 2 to 3 to 4 times per day. So we brought in a lot more ease towards the homepage, where we said, okay, we can leave stories up for 6 hours, 8 hours. Sometimes if they're really well performing, leave them for 12 hours. This was really different than they were used to be, because they thought, okay, online, it's people are there, we need to refresh, we're looking at the screens all the time. And it's also highly boosted engagement. And then lastly, when I looked at the amount of articles people read per day, you could see that it's between 3, 5, 8, some people, mainly 20. This was before we had a quality view. So some people really scroll through articles. But what I noticed actually, okay, people do read, let's say in the most extreme case, they read 20 articles per day. How much do we produce? And at that time for this publisher, it was north of 300 per day. But okay, if we're going to focus more on quality, and I'm going to ask people to make highly converting content, what are they going to do less? Okay, we can do a lot less on quantity, because 300 versus 20, that's a mismatch. So that was also the next step we took, is we actually decreased the amount of content that we produced to align more with our audience and to focus more on quality instead of quantity. So that's also what you can see here. To explain this image, this is just a given period. This was a 7-day week. So you see around 300 articles made up of 2,100 articles in that week, with the best article with the highest amount of page views all the way to the left, then the second best, and the third best, etc. So what you quickly notice, and you can take any given week, any other publisher, any section or whatsoever, you will always have a long tail of diminishing returns. So what we noticed, that 3% of the articles were responsible for 25% of the page views, while 50% of the articles were responsible for 97% of the page views, meaning that the other 50% we put on our site was only netting 3% of the page views. So there we said, okay, we're going to cut the long tail. We're going to stop producing this, because we're also diluting the average value that we have on the site. And 10, 15 years back, everyone thought, okay, online is like this unlimited bucket. We can put everything there. People will find what they need to find. Well, in essence, it's not true. You have just a limited amount of attention, of screen share, of voice. So you need to be strategic on what you show. So this is what we actually tried to do to cut the long tail. But then with some good content analytics, we'll be really able to uncover, okay, what is in this long tail? What types of stories, what types of user needs, what can we stop doing so we have more time to focus on what we can make more of? So in short, some key tips on the publication and production strategies: segment your readers, identify who your core readers are, and then understand their reading behavior and adapt your platform, your publication strategy, and your production strategy to fit their reading behavior. So make your production in line with how they read. Focus on what your highly engaged readers want to read and not what the bulk wants to read. And if you really focus on your core audience, that's when the real engagement increase starts to happen.
I mean, this is so interesting because I think there's this assumption that's, I mean, you talk about launching a subscription model, right? And you think immediately about the revenue team or the product team, but this is something that journalists can and should do in order to ensure that they're producing content that is valued by their audience and valuable to their subscription model, and that you're maximizing the gains that you're getting from each article, and not just producing stuff for the sake of producing stuff, which is such a different mindset to print. You have this huge ability, incredible ability to analyze all of this data. So would you recommend starting with this kind of framework, that data analysis that you just went through?
Yeah, sure. So the main question, who is my core reader? And it's not everyone that visits your site. So unlucky, in the first week that I came to this publisher, there was this highly performing article, and normally you just get a top 10 list. Hey, we need to make more of the top 10s. But on the first place was the nipple slip of Nicki Minaj. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not going to push the editor-in-chief, say, we need to make more of these stories. But when I looked deeper into the data with these segments, I saw, well, 90% of the people who did the page views, and it was like 1 million page views, 90% didn't come here in the last 30 to 60 days. Why? And then we saw other stories, well, people who came here on a regular basis, like 200,000 people. This is actually more valuable. So by foregoing the metric like page views as a total, but looking, okay, page views by highly engaged users or daily active users, that's the metric I really care about, even more so than converting numbers. That's also what I trained a lot of journalists about. Yeah, okay, if I look at it from top list, yes, this has 4 conversions, but this article has 300,000 subscriber views or loyal views. Imagine that's football arenas full who read your content versus 4 people who paid for it. And well, actually the metric, a conversion, a payable hit, or a click, people cannot read the article before they do that. So what actually helps those 3 is the headline or the image. That tells if people click, buy, or subscribe, not after they have read it. So that's the next metric you want to dive deeper into. Okay, what does my engaged user want to read, and what actually contributes positively to engagement?
Yeah, and before we move on to that, who should be, if someone is listening to this and they're in a public, working in a publisher brand, they want to push their company to do this, who should kind of take charge of this role? Is it editor-in-chief? Is it a kind of product editorial person? Is it just anyone in the editorial board that could impact this kind of work, or put this work into practice?
I would always advise someone from editorial, because it is, how we call it, content performance or user performance. Because just as a simple step, if engagement goes up, your conversions go up and your churn goes down. Yeah. But engagement is mainly driven by the content you make, and not by having smart paywalls, better prices, or having good win-back actions or a cancellation flow. That doesn't drive engagement. That doesn't do something for the user and their user experience. So I say this always comes from the editorial room, but this I will talk to in later stage. I always combine teams from editorial, from B2C, from B2B to work jointly on tackling these problems.
Yeah, got it. That's very helpful. Thank you. So next topics, engagement mixed into this.
Engagement. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so boosting traffic and engagement. So boosting traffic and conversions actually by increasing the inflow. There's also a lot of things you can do from the editorial side, mainly if you look at it from the homepage. But these are just some few benchmarks which were just easily accessible through Google to just benchmark yourself. Okay, where's my room to grow? So for this publisher, we checked and we had actually a very high scores. And if you talk about sessions per user, so people were coming quite often. Their session length was also quite well, and their page views they did on a total per user were also quite high. But the pages per session, they were average. So what we worked on actually is, okay, if people, they come quite often and they do 2 page views per visit, if I can increase that from 2 to 3, that's 50% increase in page views. That's much more easy than to get 50% more users from site, from Google, from whatsoever. So by increasing their engagement, the total page view amount, conversions, etc., it's much more easy to actually focus on recirculation and building up other types of reach. So the one thing we did is when we have this combined team with a person from editorial, B2B, product, B2C, let's actually work on some tests. Okay, how can we improve things in engagement, but also how does it affect advertising revenue, conversions, but also the page views in the newsroom. So what we did here on the left, you see the control is actually for the Telegraaf, is where you see the scrolling. You could see 1, 2 articles, then you had some puzzles, newsletter opt-in, a video blog, 1, 2 other articles. So you have 2 scroll windows and actually just 2 loose article positions without a block. Mm-hmm. What we actually noticed from doing heat maps is that apart from banner blindness, people also get blind for these blocks. So what we did, and we did it on mobile because there it was responsive. What if I just showed articles and advertising? We kept advertising in because that's an important revenue stream. What if we just showed articles? Then what we thought, okay, the likelihood of some person finding the article that they want to read must increase. And we could delete all the blocks, which also deleted a lot of duplicates that we would have. So the hypothesis was, well, if this would not cost us any page views, it's a success. But what we actually saw is that the ad impressions on the home page went up by 10%. On the article pages went up by 5%. Article page views went up by 5% as well. The premium page views went up by 7%, and the conversions went up by 18%. Just by giving the people coming to our mobile site having a better experience finding the article that they want to read, instead of just putting a lot of blocks, a lot of distracting stuff in between, instead of just article positions. So on the other side, we also had a lot of contribution, and you still see this with a lot of publishers, is actually, okay, what was the article that converted? Well, and when you begin as a publisher, will see that a few articles will have like 5, 10, 20 times more conversions than the article on place 10, place 20, or whatsoever. But after a while, what you see, I think this is a very positive thing, is that it's not, you don't have one article with 50 conversions, but you have 50 articles with 1 conversion. That actually tells me people are not coming for that article, but they are subscribing for your brand, which is a positive thing. So we had the last paywall article, which often gets accredited where the page view came from and the conversions attributed to. But we wanted to dive a bit deeper and looked at the last 10 steps before it. So to explain this circle, the conversion here happens on the inside. What you see in yellow is actually premium content, and the gray is free content. Okay. So all conversions, 99%, came from premium content. Some was behind a time wall, so that is the 1% you see here. But the step before it, 2/3 was also on a premium article. The step before it, it was just a quarter. So what you actually see here is that the free articles are very important in the last 10 steps before people convert. There's only a very small amount that go from paywall to paywall to paywall to paywall to paywall to eventually convert. And it actually makes sense. Why would you bump 10 times in a row to a paywall before you say, okay, will I pay, will I not pay, or whatsoever? So instead of actually looking, okay, what was the cause for the conversion, what actually drives conversion? We did a similar exercise, but it was on section level. So can't tell you which section they are, but the big blue one, that was news. And the other ones, what you could mainly see here is that there's only a few which have an own path. So normally when we go to a lot of sections, people go, like, for example, to the finance section, and we show them more finance to the right on the articles, more at the bottom, because we think, okay, you're in a finance loop, let's show you more finance, more finance. What we actually see is that the content breadth really contributes to conversion. This is also what Mather at the same time saw in their models when they were working on this problem, is that they see, okay, the more people are interested in what other types of content you have to offer, the higher the propensity to buy is. But what was interesting is, because what you see here, this is what I can tell, is the yellow one, that was video. Video had a low percentage of premium content because it was very important for ad sales. So we didn't want to lock a lot of it. So just a few percentage was on premium, and it contributed very mildly to the total amount of conversions. Well, if we flipped it upside down and we had the conversion on the outside, where do most conversions from originate? Or if you counted up all the yellow spots in the circle, we actually saw that their contribution was, instead of a few percent, was in the double digits. So just saying that in this case, video was not the main last conversion step, but it really contributes to actually getting people engaged and getting people ready to convert. Similar questions I always get about podcasts. Do we need to put podcasts behind a paywall? Yes or no? You can get direct conversions out of a podcast, but I would mainly use, in this stage, podcast as an engagement builder and try to convert on the other content as well. Because that, for me, is the difference between what is a direct conversion and what is an indirect conversion. And I would always give the advice to focus on some conversion drivers.
That's incredibly interesting and very important lessons that I don't think are shared enough across the industry, in terms of the importance of leaving some content open as well. And in particular, for, I know maybe European publishers are better at a freemium model, but if we go to the US, then harder, kind of very tough metered models, they're very common, and people tend to block most of their content, and they're scared to leave some of their content open. But actually, you're proving that the opposite is beneficial as well.
Yeah, you need to find the balance, and I'm happy to see that, or in the States, a lot of people are using a meter. So a meter also gives some stuff away, because actually what a meter does is, if you're not engaged and you don't reach often, you won't see a paywall. But if you are engaged and you go through the meter quite quickly, then you will see a paywall. So there's also, okay, you can grow your engagement up until you see a paywall. So you're not stopping them in tracks. But we see for some European publishers, they have free content and then they have premium hardwalled. People cannot taste, feel what your premium content is. And we think as a publisher, yeah, but they know what it is. And we state in our paywall, it's quality. People don't. Also, I spoke to a lot of subscribers, just had telephone calls with them, something I can highly advise, just asking them. They have no clue why we call it premium and whatnot. We always make these holistic rules, but yeah, you need, if you look at your total subscriber potential, some people are ready to convert, a lot of people are not, and you don't want to kill them in their building engagement track before you do so. And that is actually where the Sophie paywalls comes in really quite handy, is if you're not engaged and you're not ready to convert, keep on reading as much as you can up until we think you're at a point that you can convert, and then we'll block it for you. Yeah. So that's the user engagement models you see also with other entities out there having those. Those, I think, are really valuable and can really help the newsroom as much as we can, because we give back oxygen to the whole news pool, because that is a lot, I think, where also a decline from news engagement came from, is the sites are getting more locked and more locked and more locked, but people who are not ready to buy, at a point, they will leave. So by having these models and leveraging AI into it, I really think we can get some oxygen back, and just the top of the funnel people, have them interact with news, have them read, but only ask the people that are actually willing to pay the price, convert those, but for the rest, please build their engagement.
Yeah, because ultimately someone comparing two separate readers coming to the website, one's going to be, if you're talking about that circle again, one's going to be on the outside of that circle and one's maybe going to be further closer to the middle, and more engaged or less engaged, or having experienced premium content or not before. And if you're treating them both in exactly the same way, then they're going to act differently.
And this is also what we do for pricing, because it's again this mix. Okay, what is the value that this user perceives, and that's different than the value that the other user perceives. Yeah. Similar for the print newspaper. My neighbor, 75 years old, he's retired. He reads the newspaper front to end. Well, for me, it's worth 50 euros for sure. I'm happy I get it from the company, because not in the States. I read the front page, maybe some sports, maybe the back page if there's some nice stuff there. But I do not read the same stuff that he does. Similarly, for most publishers, someone is really interested in your finance section, but 80% of your content maybe might be sports or entertainment. So the value he perceives, he gets out of it can be different, but also in terms of the engagement, we're not all at the same time in our engagement journey. And that's, I think, that was one of the most important learnings I had. Why not, when you put up a paywall, then you see like hundreds of thousands of conversions, because everyone is either ready to convert or not. But no, why is this stable inflow rate that every week 10, 20, or 100 people think, okay, today I'm ready to convert? For me, I can, but that just gets explained by, okay, there's are just now people who are at the end of their engagement journey who are willing to buy, but not everyone is there at the same time, or else everyone would have converted in the first few weeks when you put up a paywall.
Yeah, completely, very well explained. And I think this kind of analysis is really important, the analysis you just described, really important to educate teams internally on all of this. I think everyone obviously knows that each reader acts differently, but the idea that we need to create different paywall journeys, different experiences towards the paywall as well as different pricing, I think is harder to prove the importance of unless you're doing it. So the analysis you just described is really great to show that.
Great. What else did I have to tell? Let me see. Oh yeah, this one's also quite interesting. Do you see conversion rate optimization slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. So when, again, looking at the data, what I noticed is I always try to read as a reader. So I'm always logged out. I don't have a subscription. So what I saw is that a couple of million people hit the paywall, but yeah, unfortunately not a million people actually converted. But they kept doing this week in, week out, day in, day out. And okay, well, are they forgetting that they cannot read this content, or why are millions of people again and again and again looking at the paywall? Well, what I quickly noticed when I was logged out is actually, we are writing, we're showing the intro, which is, from a journalistic perspective, it's an abstract, a summary of what entails what you can read in the article. So we know we have a lot of headline scanners, people browsing the homepage, reading the headlines, and that way they consume the news. But you also have a lot of people who are just reading the abstracts or the intros. So what we did in this test actually is we removed the intros. And what we saw is actually a 30% increase in conversion rate across the board. But we also looked at different sections, because in this hypothesis, okay, we showed that, okay, across the board, no intro is better than having an intro. But we also think that a good introduction, a good exciting intro can really help your conversion. And what we actually saw in the data is people who do that are opinion makers, columnists. So they really actually write very good intros, which actually increase conversion. So there we actually say, okay, on this type of content, do show the intro, because these people really get people to convert, and they do really good story building. So when we optimized for that, we saw actually 40% increase in optimizing for sections. And just having these small things, and the main message actually is, if you try to behave like most of your readers, being logged out, bumping into your paywall, trying to read what they want to read, then you will uncover these kind of nuggets, so to say, which can really have a huge impact on your conversion, more so than just opting in or putting in a dynamic paywall from the start. First, try to behave like your users, see where you run into trouble or what is actually killing your user experience, and then actually go forth with using the more robust stuff. Some other tips I always give, but this comes more into the product type of field, is apart from this A/B testing, also check with like fast checkouts, call to action, payable designs, discount price visualizations, like is it a strike through, should it be green, should it be a euro sign or not, most chosen labels. Always try to do those. They can also further increase by 10 to 30%, but then again, think as your users and what you see. Okay, some people are actually desktop users and some people are mobile users. While you often have a one size fits all for both, well, you can actually optimize. You say, okay, well, for a desktop user, it needs to look different. It needs to have some different rules, and for mobile as well. So always try to optimize for all the small segments you have on your site. Yeah, so far.
No, really interesting. Firstly, takeaway is test even the small things, and that can have a big impact. And secondly, that dynamicity, in the sense that we've described it already, about not having a one size fits all model, goes beyond simply the level of engagement, for instance, to also cover the content type. There's no one single way of maximizing conversions on a single type of content. You mentioned opinion pieces versus news for the introduction, and then also for desktop versus mobile and versus app, and how the design looks for that, or sometimes the user journey. And if all of what you've just said proves anything, it's that every reader is different based on their profile and their context, and that you shouldn't generalize and have a single design, single journey, single pricing, single modeling.
There is no good and bad, and that's what I'm always coming back to the first slide. Okay, segment your users and try to understand their reading behavior, but also what is more valuable is one user who is having, like, if I talk about print, who reads the Saturday print but really reads it front to end. Is he less valuable than someone who gets it in the mail from Monday to Saturday? I'm not sure. Who is more engaged? I don't know. Who will stay longer? No clue either. Similar goes for digital. If some people, they come just once per day, read 5 articles, I need to have something for him to tailor to him, but also for the person who just wants to be here in and out 5 times per day for 1 minute, 30 seconds whatsoever. Okay, how do I optimize my site for that person? And there is no, we want this, we want that. Similar goes with attention time. Is getting a lot of traction. Like, okay, apart from pages, this is the metric. Up until now, on all the research or the data, I still haven't found what is better. If someone comes for 5 minutes and read one article for 5 minutes, that article has a huge attention time and people in the editorial room are very, very happy. Or someone who comes and reads 5 articles for 1 minute. If I look at it from a journalistic perspective, those could have been shorter articles. Articles don't need to be 5 minutes long. But he read 5 articles, and we're now, a lot of people are pushing towards attention time on an article level. Well, that for me doesn't make sense. What I want to do is I want to grow the attention time of the user. Last week you were here 10 minutes. This week I want you here 11 minutes. Next week I want you there 12 minutes. So time spent is really important, but for me, not per se on an article level. But yeah, then again, what's better? 5 minutes, 5 articles, or 5 minutes, 1 article? There is no good and bad. Just people have different preferences on how they want to read. And we need to figure out, okay, how can we tailor to fit all their needs? And the paper, we're stuck to the paper. But online, you have so many possibilities. And that's what you also see in the amount of content. If people all wanted to read the same, we produce 10 articles per day. That's not the case. People want content breadth, and not like in the start, like, okay, we need to have 300 stories because everyone has something to read. But around 50 good stories per day, that really covers actually most what your readers try to read. And your average value actually is higher if you divide it by everything than the rest. And that's what you also see with the limited amount of share of voice you have on the homepage or on the section pages, is if you're putting a lot of junk articles or not highly valued articles, you're pushing the rest down. So you're actually diluting the engagement that people can have with your content. So always try to optimize for quality, but it needs to be in balance.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think it's such important questions that, you're right, don't necessarily need to be answered, but it's important to know that they're questions and that there's a variety of those different types of readers that read in different ways.
Yeah.
So with all of this that you've said so far in mind, and we've talked about this kind of move from thinking in a print mindset to digital, this comes with change in team organization as well, of course, and making sure that, I guess, we've talked about analyzing article performance, but all of this other work, it links more to product as well. So how can editorial and product work better together in a digital mindset rather than a print mindset, which is siloed?
So let me pull up. So coming back to this image again. So you want to cater to all, but to do so, what really helps actually is, how can I have people from the newsroom, people from the B2B department, people from the B2C department, how can I align them on this goal? Because what you often see is the people in the newsroom, they want to go for reach. The B2C director, he wants to go for as much subscriptions as possible, paywall, hardware, anything. And the B2B director just wants ad impressions. So for most companies, and I'll just go quickly over them, I start with, okay, start using an OKR, just one, what is the company's mission and vision? What should be their annual objective? Distill it into quarterly objectives so that we're all aligned. Okay, this is what we actually try to achieve on a company level, and have all the stakeholders actually commit to it to actually do so. So for most publishers, like, okay, we have this North Star on digital subscription where we want to grow through. So it's not reach, it's not the amount of subscriptions, not the ad revenue. Just pick one common goal and work on them combinedly. So what we usually do is we set up this digital growth teams, which is actually have people from the editorial room and the other departments as well. And instead of them working on a project basis, they work in an agile Scrum framework, which a lot of people know from startup or Silicon Valley's. Just try to iterate and make things better. Like the A/B tests I showed you were all done by this multidisciplinary teams. What can we change to make our site, our content performance better 2% this week? And if you stack up those 2% to 5% to 10%, that is really a huge impact over the year. But it also helps you prioritize and stuff that you need to do. If you work like with an impact effort matrix, you quickly spot out, okay, what are the quick wins and what are big projects and what stuff that we should not do. So how this looks like, because if I look at the user journey from a user perspective, you're not on the site, so you're off site, you come on the site and you go to the paywall. So that's what we actually call traffic. But if you go from the paywall to the checkout to the thank you page, that's what we call conversion. And then from the thank you page, your accounts need to be activated. There needs to be onboarding. You need to be keep engaged. But these three things are actually three separate things, which can have their own KPIs and their own goals. So we try to set up multiple teams who focus on these problems. Won't go into depth too much about it, but if you set up teams like this, like a traffic, so here what we call a content performance team is, okay, what can we do as a team on a weekly basis to actually increase the amount of users or the amount of users? Is it more newsletters? Is it we have a better homepage? All the other A/B tests that I showed. The conversion team is actually focusing, okay, how can I increase the amount of conversion rate that we have through the paywall or through subscriber shop, or should we increase the price, decrease the price? And then similarly, you would have a retention team to actually focus on the onboarding side. So by having this multidisciplinary teams working together on these problems, you get so much more stuff done with good prioritization. And just having 2-3% every day to increase, that really makes a difference to move the needle. That's, I think, the full presentation.
And how can journalists or editorial teams divide themselves between that? You've mentioned having metrics for subscriber engagement versus traffic in general. Do you recommend having different editorial teams for those two different goals, or that everyone's measuring article performance for those goals, and maybe they're given a story or they have propose a story and they have a certain goal, so they write an article knowing that it's for a retention subscriber engagement goal?
So why I make this split between traffic or content performance and conversion is often because what I want the content, the performance team to focus on is not on the amount of conversions that they can get. And that's often that we have those hanging in newsrooms like, this is the best performing article. The only thing they need to do is to get more page views, but not more page views as a whole. We've been quite successful with getting traffic from Google Discover, but if it's non-returning, so what they actually want is we want to have more page views by engaged users. Yeah. So one metric is actually a subscriber page view. So page views by subscribers is very important for your retention, but also page views by people who come here, what is it, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times per week, wherever your engagement level is. But all the other stuff like flyby of traffic, people are not coming back, don't focus on that. So I'm saying, okay, page views by your core audience. That's the stuff you need to focus on as an editorial team, because if you can get a higher engagement, that will lead to more paywall hits. So that boosts conversions, that will lead to higher engagement, which leads to less churn, and the content is performing better. But it also ties into having more ad impressions for your B2B department. So yeah, grow your engagement, but that means actually, okay, so what do our highly engaged users want to read, and how can I actually make them even more engaged than they were, or how can I get more highly engaged people? And then don't focus on the conversion part. That's where the conversion team comes in. They take over when the paywall hits, and they focus on what price does it needs to be, what color does the paywall needs to be. Do we have Google Pay, Apple Pay, all those stuff. Editorial doesn't need to worry about, just focus on building engagement. And the other people are focusing on capitalizing on the engagement, actually having people to convert.
Yeah, very useful to remind us that cross-functional teams are important, but also that everyone should have their job and kind of, I guess, in some ways, stick to their silo whilst also collaborating across teams.
Yeah, that's something you see often. It depends from newsroom to newsroom, but then for the one, the publishing team wants to meddle in the pricing and the whole user flow, but also a hot topic is, okay, who's in charge of the homepage? Is that editorial, or is it actually like content marketers who are saying, okay, you just make the best content and we know how to get more people on that content? What I often see, it's a hybrid role, like publication managers who do kind of both job, but in essence, should an editor-in-chief really be focused on what widgets do we have, what is the user flow, what is the user experience? Of course, they're responsible for the message it shows and what the branding is, but in essence, the editorial team just needs to make really good content, and the publication marketers, they really need to get, okay, how am I going to get a lot of people on this content? That's also for me the split in a newsroom is content creation and publication strategy. Yeah,
very clear. Got it. Thank you so much. We're out of time, and I could ask you questions on this all day, and I've learned so much even from this call. It's been so interesting, and I think it's going to be really valuable for everyone listening. If anyone is interested in getting in contact with you or following more of your and Mather's work, how would you recommend doing that?
Look me up on LinkedIn, shoot me a message, or I'll send some contact information to you. If you Google my name or on Mather, there are ways to find me.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Ignaz, for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone will find it as interesting as me. Thank you.